Joe Burrow probably has to play. What does that mean for him? Saquon Barkley has admitted to a high ankle sprain. How does that change his outlook? Christian Watson, scheduled off day. What does that mean for his week 3 status? Stick around for all of that in the next few minutes because bienvenidos. Welcome to the Injury Prone Podcast. Listen, it's week 3, big week. You know what? If you're 0-2, we're going to help you get that win. If you're 2-0, we're going to help you. And you got somebody injured, we're going to help you. And you got me, Jorge Martin, but also we got El Doctor, Dr. Edwin Porras, mi amigo. ¿Cómo estamos?
Vamos, Jorge. We're going along. We're chugging along. We're ready to talk Burrow, Barkley, Aaron Jones. We're going to talk about all these guys. This is a fun time of year for me, not because guys are injured, but because from a fantasy perspective, we can really start to pick up on, distressed owners and distressed managers. We can get injury discounts. We can exploit some fears and some anxieties and be sharks in the water, right? We don't want to be the fish. No queremos ser el pez. We want to be the shark, el tiburón. So, man, I'm excited. Let's get after it.
No, definitely get into it. Well, you know what? First off, want to make sure you're following us on YouTube. Injury Prone on YouTube. We already hit 100 subscribers. Make sure you're getting in there. You know what? Get that alert because this is one of the most important episodes that you're going to hear every week. Also, you're making sure you're following Dr. Edwin Porras on Twitter at FB Injury Doc and join that Injury Prone Patreon, patreon.com/Injury Prone. Get in there. Calf injury that really it lingered, basically took him out of training camp. And now, the tweak that has, shaken Cincinnati. Now, we do have past history. Aaron Rodgers played through a calf injury, but man, he looked like an injured soldier the entire time. Still, he had a fantastic season. Joe Burrow, kind of what's his outlook?
Yeah, this is really tough. And here is a list of quarterbacks since 2017 who have had calf issues on a recurrent basis. Or maybe not on a recurrent basis, but they came up on the injury report at least once with it. Alex Smith, Tyrod Taylor, Dak Prescott, Jimmy Garoppolo, Taylor Heineke, Tom Brady. That's the entire list. None of those guys had issues. Again, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers. And once something becomes chronic, once something extends past the 6 months and a year mark, that's when you really start having concerns about the long-term viability of that muscle. Now, I'm not aware of any specific data that says because you have a calf strain that's automatically going to lead to an Achilles rupture. I don't think that there's a one-to-one correlation. Obviously, people are going to draw the comparison to Aaron Rodgers. People are going to draw the comparisons to Kevin Durant. There's not really a one-to-one correlation there. But obviously, when you have a calf muscle that leads into the tendon and is literally becomes the tendon, that is a concern, is an Achilles injury. But really, the primary concern is another setback, is another tweak. And, we mentioned he's got to play. At this point, they signed some guy right off the street. They're 0-2. I can tell you, Jorge, from my limited experience in professional sports, my feel is that the Bengals are, I don't want to say panicking, but man, they are 0-2 and the Ravens are 2-0. They are quickly watching their season go down the drain. Their only option is to put Joe Burrow out there if they really want a fighting chance. So the question isn't should you or should you not start Joe Burrow, because I'm not waiting until Monday night to find out if he even plays. I'm starting someone in his place. The question is, what should you do with Joe Burrow right now? And to be 100% honest, I'm seeing what I can get for him, right? I know you spent a 4th-round pick on him, a 5th-round pick on him, but there's just no way to predict which direction this is going to go. There is a small possibility he ends up on the IR. At this point, in the offseason, I was saying this is nothing. He should be fine. I guess I was wrong, right? Like, I got to admit, I got to take the L on that one. I really didn't think this was going to be an issue. He's not a mobile guy. He's a quarterback. He stands in the pocket. He hasn't had a history of this, but obviously it came back. And that's about that 20 to 30% recurrence rate in those calf injuries. So, at this point, I'm trying to just cut my losses with Joe Burrow or maybe just streaming another guy. But this is a really tough situation. And again, I'm personally not starting him in any leagues that I'm in.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's for me, it's hard to actually, take 50 cents on the dollar on a guy. But I mean, could this linger long enough? Because I would say stream a guy until he's, until he looks good. Because we talked about Aaron Rodgers. He was really good that season. But I mean, again, he did not look good doing it.
So I think that one of the things you have to consider is like how much Joe Burrow doesn't run as it is, right?
Right.
How often is he going to evade the pocket? How often is he going to be in scramble mode? How often is he going to be outside of the pocket making plays? And how often are they just going to say, hey, 1, 2, 3, get it out? I don't know, right? Those are all the things you have to consider. You have to consider the re-injury risk. If I'm in a 2-quarterback league, I'm sitting 2-0, and I know my team is pretty stacked, but I got a shaky QB2, right? If I have somebody like a Sam Howell as my QB2 or something like that, or like I went all in on Kenny Pickett, he's my QB2. I'm filling offers out for Joe Burrow to see what happens because I'm feeling good about my team otherwise. Those are the only instances where I will be the shark and try to pounce on some of that missed opportunity. But right now, things aren't looking good for Joe Burrow, and especially if you're 0-2, I don't recommend going after Joe Burrow, which is going to be a different story in the next guy that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, well, the next one actually comes from, we got a question from Dave. So it's regarding Saquon Barkley with a
Patreon. From the Patreon.
Yeah, from the Patreon.
Hey, you join the Patreon, you get your question answered on here.
Yes. So Dave, muchas gracias for joining the Patreon. So with a high ankle sprain confirmed, how do we value Saquon going forward? So is he buy low? So as we don't expect him before week 6-ish, or, with this being the same ankle as last time, do we stay away?
This is a good question. And I think that there is some nuance to it because it is his second go around. That is something to consider. On one hand, he knows what to expect, and we know what to expect from Saquon Barkley. On the other hand, it's been a few years. Maybe it's not necessarily the shining example you want to use, but he was able to come back from this high ankle sprain at some point in 2019, and he didn't look terrible, right? When Saquon Barkley came back from that high ankle in 2019, he still was able to put up numbers that were, they did okay. They weren't necessarily the best in the world. I'm looking at 14.5 PPR points, 9.7, 30, 43 PPR points, 20, right? Those are all from 13 to 17, week 13, 17. So he can still perform. A guy like Saquon Barkley, same thing. If I'm 2-0 and feeling good about my squad, and you're looking at some of the 0-2 teams and they're desperate, and maybe an 0-2 squad has Saquon Barkley on their team, I am making an offer for Saquon Barkley, something like maybe a Jerome Ford for Saquon Barkley, right? Maybe a Kyron Williams for Saquon Barkley, right? You could make the argument you want to keep those guys anyway, but if you really went 0 RB or you really went wide receiver heavy, I do think that Saquon is a guy that you could anchor and turn your team into an anchor RB team and still get to keep all the additional wide receivers and tight ends that you were able to stockpile. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm talking myself into buying Saquon Barkley. Don't expect him to be 100% by the time he gets back, but give him an additional week or two. So the third week back, definitely from the high ankle sprain. Generally speaking, guys are able to perform.
Yeah, and on that backfield, I mean, Matt Breida, Gary Brightwell, the rookie Eric Gray. If it's an extended period of time, I really think it's going to be a very muddy backfield, as I wrote in Yahoo Fantasy. And honestly, you know what? I want to grab a flyer on Eric Gray because I think he might be the most talented of the three, and might be someone who kind of emerges similar to like Isaiah Pacheco did last year. So Dave, muchas gracias for your question. Muchas gracias por tu pregunta. Appreciate it. Patreon, get your questions in. So this next one, I am very interested in because I have Aaron Jones all over the place. And, we saw him grab his hamstring. He's back to limited practice this week. So how much is that a good sign? Could he still be trending toward an out?
So he could, in theory, still trend towards sitting out, but we don't necessarily expect that, right? Because the average since 2018, and this is in the season-long playbook that's available in the Patreon, since 2018, running backs with a hamstring strain, they've missed about 1.2 games. So it is possible, right, that he misses another game. The median missed games is 1, right? So that's the mid mark. So we would assume he's probably going to he's probably going to be able to come back, especially since he came back in practice. What you need to know for Aaron Jones is that the weekly recurrence rate, so the first week back from this injury, these guys tend to have a recurrence 24% of the time. That's something to consider. The other thing you want to really notice is that the fantasy points, they do reach 100% of their seasonal average in fantasy points, but the median is lower. So what that tells you is that they still have a decent floor, but that ceiling isn't quite there yet. So Aaron Jones, I could be wrong. I could eat my words. Understand that this is a median estimation. This is an approximate thing. You can expect median value. And here's actually what I wrote in the draft guide itself. I said that the high weekly recurrence rate coupled with quote fine weak winner rate and significant drop off in median routes and median receiving yards makes running backs coming off a hamstring strain moderate to highly volatile. So again, referring back to some running backs, if you're sitting pretty with Kyron Williams and Jerome Ford, you probably don't have to start Aaron Jones if you don't want to, right? If you're sitting pretty with Rashad White, James Cook, those guys in a Jerome Ford or something like that, you probably don't have to start Aaron Jones. But if you're in another spot where you're 0-2 and you know that you've got Aaron Jones, like you're throwing him out there. That's really my consensus.
Yeah, I've got a one where Roshan Johnson is my second running back, and I'm going to put Aaron Jones, even in a tough matchup against the New Orleans defense, which has been very, very good up till now. So that's something to keep an eye on. So the next one, another running back, Derrick Henry, coming up with a toe. I mean, we've talked about how painful these are for them to play through, and him being a bigger guy. How much of a concern is that with him having been a DMP?
It's not a big concern because they did add rest on the back of the toe today on the injury report officially. So they are just resting him, right? Counting his mileage. Obviously, Tajay Spears has been much more involved. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this one. It's not nothing. I'll say that about the toe. It is something to monitor. You probably want to have Tajay Spears rostered, especially if you're a Henry owner. But if you're not a Henry owner, that is your lottery ticket. Go get Tajay Spears on your roster right now. He's, Derrick Henry's 29, if not 30 years old. I don't remember. He's 29 or 30. He's got injuries, right? Not just mileage, quote unquote mileage. He's got injury mileage already on those feet and those ankles. We already see that he's sharing a lot of the workload. Last year he had, I think it was a significant, I don't want to quote a number because I don't remember. He had significantly more passing work last year, and yet he still finished significantly 24% below his PPR mark from 2021 in 2022. So that's to say he had a lot more passing work and he still didn't meet his 2021 points per game value. So Derrick Henry has been high risk. I said I won't spend a lot of time on it, and then I spent a lot of time on it. So that's it. We can move on to the next guy.
Hey, you already talked about Tajay Spears, so we can. So I don't need to add anything more to that. The next guy, Christian Watson, he had a limited practice on Wednesday, then a DNP on Thursday. Hamstrings. He had some hamstring issues last year, so kind of his outlook for this week again against a tough New Orleans Saints defense.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of confusion with Christian Watson because he was limited last Friday. He was limited again on Wednesday. And then yesterday, Thursday, he was a DNP. He didn't practice. People were a little concerned. There were reports from the beat writers that this was a planned scheduled day to manage his workloads. Want to say, chef's kiss. Beautiful. Love the medical staff and how they're managing. He met his workload limit for that day. They're tracking it objectively. They said, Christian Watson, you're not practicing today. I really love that. So they're doing it. I think the Packers are doing a good job. He didn't go last week. I think he can go this week. He returned to practice today, still limited. He did have this issue last year. Understand that for receivers, we talked about running backs before, but for receivers, the weekly recurrence rate on these hamstring strains is much higher. You actually see a weekly recurrence rate in wide receivers for hamstrings sitting at right around 30%. A weekly recurrence rate. So that's pretty high. Here's what I said about re-injury rates in the season-long playbook available in the Patreon relative to hamstring strains and wide receivers. Re-injury rate is high and the stud and dud rates are essentially equal with an 18% weak winner rate. Wide receivers off this injury are definition of boom or bust with a slightly higher emphasis on the bust. Players with these injuries should generally be avoided in trades, acquisitions, or in season-long leagues, especially in the first week back. But I mentioned, I'm pretty sure it was here a couple weeks ago, I need to give him a chance. Right. I drafted Christian Watson. I want to give him a chance. I want to see if he can overcome that. I'm going a little bit by feel. Not everything's data. I told myself I'd be a little bit better about going by feel. Given the way that I know that the Packers have managed his current hamstring strain, despite that New Orleans defense, I really want to give Christian Watson a chance because, man, even if he does, I don't know, let's say worst case scenario, he gets ruled out again in the second quarter, but he caught a 40-yard bomb. He made up the value. There he is. A guy like Christian Watson, you have him in your lineup for upside. And quite frankly, I'm not going to tell you to sit him. Just understand that he's a hold, right? I wouldn't necessarily actively want to go out and draft Christian Watson or trade for Christian Watson. But since I drafted him in a handful of places, I want to see how that goes. I want to play that out, and I want to see what he can do.
Yeah, unless you were able to hit the waiver wire with somebody, I mean, it's hard to replace kind of like what you said, the boomer bust. Maybe he won't have the all of the routes run, but heck, we saw with the Denver Broncos last week. Marvin Mims ran 12 routes. He caught 2 balls for 113 yards. So Christian Watson has that game breaking ability. So I think he's someone that can actually, like you said, only maybe run half the routes of Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed, and then but still be explosive, and because he is explosive, and we've seen that before. So over to Seattle. DK Metcalf, he had that rib injury that we saw kind of that they did in replays a little bit. He was a DMP most recently. A level of concern with him possibly missing the game.
Yeah, so looking at the data for wide receivers with shoulder, ribs, and chest injuries, you see that 66% of the time since 2018, wide receivers miss no time at all. 18% of the time, they miss one game. So there is about roughly, right, if we're gonna approximate it, there's about a 20% chance that Metcalf doesn't go. I haven't seen any updates since they are over on the West Coast or in your time zone. I haven't seen any updates specifically on his practice report. So last I knew, he didn't practice. That is something to consider, right? It's not nothing. But when it comes to if he's active, should you start him? I do sit in the camp that if he's active, you should start him. These injuries are not necessarily easy to deal with. They're kind of a pain tolerance issue. The weekly recurrence rate isn't anywhere nearly as bad as something like a hamstring, right? It's half of that. It's about 16%, right? It's a small sample, but it is something that you have to consider with DK Metcalf. But understand that their targets, they don't fall, right? They're 118% of their average, so still at 100% of the routes that they typically run when they're healthy. 114% of their fantasy points when compared to when they're healthy. Targets per route run, 113%, right? Nothing really drops. So if DK Metcalf is active, which again, at this point, if we're going to really put numbers to it, there's about an 80% chance he's active as of right now. I'm starting DK Metcalf. I'm putting him in my lineups, and I'm putting him in any, GPPs that I'm trotting out there this week.
Yeah. Plus the Carolina Panthers, they're pretty banged up in the secondary right now. They've been very forgiving in the rushing offense, but yeah, I think there could be some big plays for DK Metcalf especially if JC Horn sits out another game, which would not be very good for him. Yeah, let's go over to DeAndre Hopkins, back to Tennessee. The ankle has been, and he's a guy, and you talked about this last week. He's not a guy who practices very often, but he had a limited practice yesterday. Yeah, yesterday being Thursday, and he played through it last week. Could we be looking at playing through it and but just kind of limiting him?
Yeah, again, the practice report is really hard to read on that guy because he doesn't practice as it is. It is notable, though, that he was a full participant on Wednesday, went back down to a limited participant on Thursday. Did he have a setback? We don't really know. This is what we call, an eversion or high ankle sprain type mechanism that he sustained in week 1. What you need to know is that in week 1, he ran a route on 85% of team dropbacks. And then in week 2, it was just 76%. So there is a bit of a difference there. He was clearly limited. I mean, he did make a couple of big time catches when they needed him to, but he ultimately didn't really deliver from a fantasy perspective. Let me correct myself. In week 2, he actually only ran a route on 65% of the team's dropbacks. And compared to week 1, that was at 76% or 86%. Sorry. I really just jumbled all the numbers there. All what you need to know is DeAndre Hopkins ran a lot fewer routes in week 1 relative to week 2. I don't think that he's back to 100%. I also don't think he's necessarily a must start. I think he's going to be, it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be a difficult run out for me to throw DeAndre Hopkins out there unless I really have to. I'm not saying don't, right? I'm not saying sit him, but he's kind of a coin flip. If you want to sit him, I wouldn't necessarily blame you.
And it is a tough defense. The Cleveland Browns have been one of the best defenses. They've got a great secondary, great pass rush. So that one, going up against them, that's, I agree with you that if you can sit him, if you have like a Michael Thomas or something like that, that's definitely someone to consider to play instead of DeAndre Hopkins. Don't go like grabbing someone off the waiver wire to get, I don't know if I'm playing Josh Reynolds instead of him. So that's a little too local for me. Well, somebody who's gone local, Puka Nacua. I mean, he's gone local the first 2 weeks, but again, coming up with an oblique, he had a DNP. He played through it, had a phenomenal game against the 49ers last week. Now he's got the Bengals on Monday Night Football where he's got an extra day. So could we be looking more encouraging for him to have another, be back on the field?
Yeah, so this is a situation where we really want to monitor his practice status, and we have not seen what's going on in LA quite yet. He didn't practice yesterday, like you mentioned, but this wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue earlier, in week 2, and so I don't necessarily anticipate it being an issue again in week 3. It's just something that they're probably just trying to manage because, I mean, let's be honest, like the Rams are banged up right now. Obviously, they just got rid of Cam Akers. They want to keep Matthew Stafford upright. I mean, this situation is just in LA it's been quite incredible how they've managed it. But yeah, I'm not necessarily concerned with Puka. I do anticipate that he'll practice today. At least I think that's the hope. Check the Patreon as the weekend goes on. They're obviously it's going to be something to monitor throughout the week for them. But yeah, for now, I'm not too concerned on Puka Nacua.
Yeah, I think there's been so much good feeling among the Rams, especially with him kind of coming back. I mean, even Sean McVay was talking about not really needing to practice every day to be able to play. But again, he does have that extra day with this being Monday Night Football. So yeah, I mean, until he doesn't play, until he's ruled out, which I agree with you. I'm following your orders on this one. So, okay. So you know what, we got a different section now, kind of updates on a few players that are injured and either on IR or expected to miss some time. And Austin Ekeler, the first week was, there was back and forth. Maybe he plays or doesn't play. Now I heard him on Eckler's Edge this week, and he did not sound like he was trending toward playing. Already had 2 DMPs. I mean, trending toward not playing.
Yeah, this looks like he's not gonna practice today per Jeremy Fowler, and this I think is adding up to be a high ankle sprain. It wasn't easy to diagnose on film, but it was something that I mentioned that was a possibility, and it does seem to be that's the case. In terms of when he's going to return, that's anybody's guess. The average, or I'm sorry, not the average, but the mode, right? So most often since 2016 actually, running backs come back from a high ankle sprain at either 0 weeks, right, or after missing 3. So it's bimodal is what you call that. There are 2 modes most frequently happen. I don't think it would be a bad idea to keep Austin Ekeler out until week 6. But what I can tell you is that Brandon Staley is probably coaching for his life right now. And if that means they lose again, they go 0-3, and he thinks he's doing whatever he can in his power, and he's going to say, Austin Ekeler, you're playing. Now that'll be interesting, right? Because what just happened with the running backs and Austin Ekeler, they came to a bit of an impasse, didn't they? So, immovable force or unstoppable force, immovable object.
Right.
It's going to be interesting what happens if the Chargers lose. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. Right now, I would lean Austin Ekeler waiting to come back until after the bye. We understand that he is a competitive guy. He's fiery. We've gotten to know him quite a bit, right? Because he's really generous with his time. But functionally, medically, I would wait until week 6. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that one, you know what? I'm glad you touched on the fact that the running back market, because it's kind of like this, similar to the Saquon Barkley. Do these guys push, or do they just come back when they're healthy so that they don't put up bad numbers? Because both of them are playing for contracts for next year, either from their current team or from the next team. So yeah, that one, Joshua Kelly, I think this week, last week I was down on Joshua Kelly. This week I'm firing him up. The Vikings have not been good on defense against the run or the pass. This game's going to see a lot of points. I see Joshua Kelly being very, very involved in this offense. And plus they had a lot of red zone work last year. It's more than likely going to him. So we just talked about his teammate. Now we're going to go to Cooper Kupp. This is week 3. He's on IR. Hamstrings can be tricky, obviously, because this is a re-injury. A little update?
Yeah, just a small update. I know people are asking constantly about Cooper Kupp. It does seem like they're going to try to bring him back after week 5. I do think he'll be ready at that point. Don't be afraid if he pops up on the injury report after that, after coming back. He's probably going to have some scar tissue. He still is at risk to re-injury the hamstring yet again. But again, if you're 2-0, 3-0 after this weekend and you're a Shark, like, you're throwing offers out for Cooper Kupp. You want him on your team. I'm trying to acquire him in a handful of leagues where that's the case for me. So don't be afraid for Cooper Kupp. It was ridiculous that anybody ever even considered that he wouldn't come back in 2023. I think that's a bit preposterous to even suggest. So he is going to come back. He'll probably be back in week 5, week 6 at the latest. But yeah, that's really what I got on Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. Plus he's so good. I think with the Ram offense looking as good as surprisingly looking as good as it is, I think it's only going to be better with Cooper Kupp in there opposite Puka Nacua. It's going to bring down Nakua's numbers, but you know what? I think it's still overall, both will be very, very productive. Last one on our updates, Deontay Johnson. He's going to miss. He's definitely going to miss some time. What's his update?
This was surprising to me because I mentioned this last week on the show, and obviously this is why you don't always go with the data, which is why you got to do your gut too. But there wasn't really anything leading us to believe that this was going to be too serious for Deontay Johnson. But they did put him on IR. What I was trying to figure out, and I never really got a clear answer on, is whether the Steelers needed to put him on the IR the day before their game, because it wasn't reported until the day of their game. Usually teams have until that Saturday, right? If it's a Sunday game, they have to hand those over to the league office who's going to be on the IR the Saturday before the Sunday game. And that's not what the Steelers did, because they obviously played on a Monday. So it could have been that they did place him on IR the day before, and that Schefter didn't report it until the following day. So all that is to say that, if this game, if week 2 counted against Deontay Johnson, then he will be back by week 6, I think. But other than that, if this game didn't count, then it'll be week 8 and after their week 7 bye. So Deontay Johnson, put him on ice. Again, if you're a Shark, you're going after him. Put in an offer for Deontay Johnson. Throw in a low ball offer. Somebody like DeAndre Hopkins, or your wide receiver 3, or your flex, or somebody that you just have, a Jerome Ford or something. I'm putting out offers for guys like Deontay Johnson, because that offense, I get it, it's not good, but it wasn't good last year, and he's bound to regress from a touchdown perspective.
Yeah, and they've gone against two tough defenses, and last week George Pickens had himself a good game against the Browns, and this week it's going to be it's a much easier defense. The Raiders have not been very good against the run or the pass, so I'm expecting much better days ahead for the Steelers this week. So we got let's go into the quick updates section. So some guys that have already been ruled out, but just kind of looking ahead to their injury outlook. Going to start with the number 1 pick in the draft, Bryce Young, our ankle injury. He's already out.
Yeah, they're reporting that this is going to be a 1 to 2 week injury. That lines up with the data since 2018 on quarterbacks and ankle injuries. I don't expect this to necessarily be a big issue. I did want to sort of jump ahead here, Jorge, because we did get word that Jalen Waddle's back at practice today. Now, I don't want to jump the gun, because sometimes guys, beat reporters will say XY player is back at practice. It's not really a full practice. And they still log it as a DNP. Jalen Waddle, again, there's a 52% chance since 2018, 52% of wide receivers have missed no games. So it's still a possibility that he, comes back. But given the Dolphins' history, the fact that it seems like he's moving a little slower through the protocol than we'd like, I would not necessarily plan on having Jalen Waddle if he is active. Similar to Christian Watson, it takes one play for this guy to pay off, but understand that there's a 33% recurrence rate with these concussions among wide receivers. That is an issue. That is something that you really want to monitor based on previous data. So really pay attention, really know what kind of lineup that you're trying to put out there, because it could be, it could wreck what you're trying to do. Let me make a correction. I'm sorry. I'm reading off of this list. I'm making a ton of mistakes today. We'll get better. We'll watch the film. We'll get better. Jorge. But what I meant to say is there is an 8% recurrence rate, but there's a 32% dip in the production from a fantasy points perspective.
Oh, okay.
After their concussions. So it is something that you're going to want to monitor. It's something that you're going to want to understand when you're sliding them into lineups. So again, it's the right numbers. I just flipped the places. So highly volatile if Jalen Waddle's active at all.
Yeah, that one's and you want him in there because the Broncos going into Miami. I mean, they're a good defense. I mean, Patrick Surtain is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, but teams seem to melt in Miami, especially this time of year where it's still warm and yeah. So keep an eye on that. If Waddle's in there, I'm definitely playing him. Did you want to add anything on Bryce Young? Did anything else? Do we want to jump back into him?
Nope, not much to add on Bryce Young.
Okay. So Anthony Richardson already been ruled out with a concussion. You've talked a lot about concussions, and they want to protect the asset.
Yeah. So Anthony Richardson out. He has a history of concussions. The Colts are conservative. It's really all we got for this week on him.
Okay. David Montgomery, that you talked a lot about the thigh injury that he had, just kind of like the way he got twisted up. I guess he's already, he's been DNP. I mean, he's basically already kind of declared himself out. What's his outlook as far as timing?
Yeah, so this shouldn't be more than a week, maybe 2 weeks for David Montgomery. He's going to be back pretty soon. So, all your Jahmyr Gibbs stonks are going to have to wait. And same thing for Jamal Williams. Seems like he's trending downwards. That's going to be about a 1 week absence. It could, tack on 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because they did mention that it was a pretty serious injury. You're going to want to grab probably not Tony Jones. You're going to want to grab Kendre Miller. I don't know if you're on him this year, Jorge.
Yes. Oh, yes, very much. I just wrote him up on my rookie report. If there's a week where he's going to pop, this is the week, because he's full practice, and Tony Jones is the only other competition. Alvin Kamara comes back next week, so this is time to shine for Kendre Miller.
Perfect.
And by the way, yeah, we just got the player update on player alert. Jamal Williams is officially out for this game. So, maybe we got a little quicker this week. So, hey, I got one food question for you: tacos dorados or soft shell?
No, man, you got to go soft shell. You got this.
Hard shell is more versatile.
Hard shell tacos, the American version, are an abomination to our people. And they should not exist. They should not be put on storefronts. They should not be placed in stores. It should be illegal, and it should be a felony to even call the shells that they sell in the store tacos at all. Please don't use hamburger meat to put into your tacos. If you're going to have tacos, find a local, drive down to we've said this before. I love my people. Drive down to the hood. Go to find your local panaderia. Go to the barrio. Find a taco truck. The sketchier, maybe go during the daytime, but the sketchier the truck and the area looks, the better you're gonna enjoy those tacos. Taco dorados. I gotta go. I don't know. I can't do it. I just gotta go. Gotta go tradicional. Just uno taquito, una tequilita. Hey, recommendation this week. Instead of a candy, I wanted to say I recommend Cimarron tequila. It is super good. It is not too hard at the end, but I also want to get your thoughts. Taco dorados or flour tortilla?
Tacos dorados, I only do them at my mom's house because she does them perfect. So it gets nice.
I get that.
So there is one place in LA called Tito's Tacos, which it's been an old school place. It's an institution. They're the only place that does it right. So that's, if I'm going out, that's the place I'm doing it. But otherwise, I'm doing it at mom's. Everything else, I'm doing it. I'm doing soft shell. I just give me the nice corn tortillas. Flour though, one of my favorite treats is a little taco de mantequilla. Put a little mantequilla on a little butter on a flour tortilla. Oh. Eso. That's sometimes my dessert. So, oh man. So this has been a very sweet show. Kind of dessert. Everybody, one more time, join the Patreon. Patreon.com/injuryprone. Tocayo, compadre, what else we got coming up?
That's it. Make sure you go to fantasypoints.com. Check out all my work there. Patreon, Twitter @FBInjuryDoc. Good luck in them streets.
Yes. Make sure to subscribe to us. Subscribe to Injury Prone on YouTube. Get in there. Come on, get those alerts. All right. I'm Jorge Martin 17, and you find him at FB Injury Doc. Buena suerte. Set your lineups. Make sure you're listening for more updates between now and Sunday morning. Till now, salud.